expense. And one of our commitments in doing this 11-day program was to try and help fund this movie forward. I had a long conversation with Bob Trench, the co-director, and he said, you know, our biggest challenge is when the people who screen this film, who are generally white, see it, they go, I don't know, you know, we don't want our people feeling bad. And then, but when they do get in, people love it, and they're moved to do something. But they need funds to keep going forward. So for those of you who felt the film is important and who have the resources to do so, I'd like you to consider digging deep tonight and give till it feels right. And on your way out, you can make a donation in our either in our little red box that looks like a cake, or you can make it on Square to our people who will be sitting out there. And we don't want anyone to feel guilty. This isn't about guilt. You know, if you can't give us a blessing. But if you can, please do. And if you'd like to stay for questions, I'd like to bring our co-director up, wherever she is. Woo, all right. I thought, oh no, she didn't leave and go. She said something about going and getting food, and I was like, no. So again, please give Sarah Edstrom and the film Dodging Bullets a round of appreciation.
Thank you guys so much for being here. And it looks like there weren't too many people who snuck out under the cover of darkness. It might have just been me trying to go get some Little Caesars. So if I have stuff in my teeth, let's all pretend that that's not happening. But I'm here if anyone has any questions or comments. I would love for this to start a discussion. And even if that doesn't take place here, I am really honored that everyone was here, and I hope that you will continue having these conversations with other people in your lives.
Can you tell us where the movie's going to be screened, or is it going to be shown on TV, or how would people get a copy and that kind of stuff?
Okay, so I know it's going to, it's been traveling around the country. Right now, people can request screenings. I believe it's actually going to be coming out on DVD next year. Tom?
In the spring of next year.
Okay.
This fall, and then I would say spring of next year. This one will be the provisional release.
Okay, I just found out that information, so I'm really excited. Oh, it'll be coming out on DVD spring of next year.
Will it be on public television now?
Public television?
I don't know what I can say at this point,
He doesn't know what can be said. He's way more knowledgeable about that stuff. Yes.
There was one person I couldn't hear very well. I'm hard of hearing, and it was the woman who was walking around with the microphone. I think Eagle was in her name. She was Linda, and I wondered if you could just sort of summarize what she was saying.
Linda Eagle Speaker is a boarding school survivor. She is Blackfoot from southern Alberta, Canada, and she was talking about when she was, she was in the boarding schools, I want to say from age 6 to 16, and what she was talking about was the teachers coming into the children's rooms and coming in to sexually abuse them. And the stories I have heard from boarding school survivors will make your blood run cold. And it was really kind of a struggle with this documentary to create a balance between telling those stories that were really frightening without turning it into kind of that trauma porn that can be really dehumanizing, where it's, you know, show us your pain, like, because Linda has lived an incredible life. Like, she is a certified mind-body medicine healer. She speaks her language. She's got phenomenal kids. And being a boarding school survivor is a part of her story. It's actually... Oh. Yes.
This is a question both for you and for Anton. One of the questions that came up, one of the things I found powerful is just the idea, it's around line 3, the pipeline that's going through northern Minnesota, and the fact that for all that it's doing, one of the things that I don't think has got much attention is it's re-traumatizing. And you talked about the energy. I mean, the power doesn't seed with anything without a demand. And in terms of the kind of the institutional work around line 3, what is the, you know, the process has been horribly flawed. And this, somebody I think was asking about direct actions that we could be doing right now, and one of those is line 3 is still in play and can still be stopped. But just looking for some, it's pretty easy for me to get angry about that, and how, like, what is the healthy amount of engagement and, I'm looking for the right word, but anger and pushback and direct action to stop that project. Thank you.
I think there's, you know, looking at Standing Rock, that there was such a strong protest against it, and recognition of, you know, why is it that Native lives are less valuable than non-Native lives? Because the pipeline was actually not originally supposed to go through Standing Rock, but the town it was originally proposed to go through a big fit, because this is really dangerous. It will cause huge environmental impacts. So let's just move it on to the reservation. I think, though, part of the discussion is that we need to look both at, you know, the understanding that, like, this is a huge environmental hazard. This is so harmful to people's health. But we also need to say, well, why are there people who are actually for this? And I know that one of the things that oftentimes gets promised is this is going to create so many jobs, this is going to make oil so much cheaper. And a lot of the debates that go on with undocumented individuals, it's really just pitting poverty against poverty. Instead of saying, look, the reason why there's wealth inequality is because there is enough money to go around. It's just not going around. The conversation that, you know, people get pitted against one another, the reason why you're poor is because this undocumented person is here and took your job. So I think one of the conversations that happens with the pipeline is, oh my God, look, all the people who are working out in North Dakota, they're making this amazing money. So then I know a lot of the rage that I heard about the pipeline was, oh, so just because you guys don't want this to go through the reservation, that means nobody should be able to have this opportunity to make money. Yeah, a lot of, it's jingling keys. It's creating a distraction from the real conversation we need to have by pitting one oppressed community against another. Anton, would you please take over? Or, yeah. Well, I'm just excited to hear what he has to say.
I know there's a lot going on with the pipelines, and a lot to unpack there, and we've had a pretty full evening here already. But I guess the first thing I would say is, you know, there are many organizations that are leading a lot of work on this. So Indigenous Environmental Network, Honor the Earth, and others can offer a lot of information, talking points, background information. I've kind of been pulled into conversations, even like Enbridge was looking for an Indian whisperer, I think. But there's a lot there. One of the things that I think maybe those of us who would love to see the pipelines not go through Indian country need to remind ourselves of is that as long as there is a demand for the product, someone's going to figure out how to get it to market, right? And how do you want it to get to market? On a truck? On a train? On a pipeline? Like, there's no neutral way to get that product to market. So the long-term solution really has to be reducing our dependence on fossil fuels and getting green with our sources of energy and how we transport ourselves and things like that. That's the long-term plan, and it has to be at the front of the effort. Dealing with pipelines is like in between. And yes, it's been pretty horrible the way that, and not all pipeline companies are the same, but the way that they sort out navigating things, because it's just not very ethical. They'll say they want their product taken out of the ground to point A and brought to point B. And they just draw the line of what is most financially expeditious for them to get it there. And if they actually even did something like drew a line that was most environmentally sensitive, even if it was a little longer route, that would be a little bit different. And then looked at all of the different Native nations and municipalities and like honorably obtained the free prior informed consent, it would really be a different discussion. But they don't. They just piece it out, not as one long pipeline, but as like 1,000 tiny little things. And so they'll get all the permissions up to the edge of the reservation, all the permissions from the edge of the reservation. They'll build it on both sides, and then they'll say, why are these people fighting this? This is jobs, and that kind of stuff. So it has to do a lot with the process and, honorably dealing with all of the different stakeholders, There's a lot there. It is true, though, that the protest to pipelines has really altered their course. So there was one in northern Minnesota called Sandpiper, and every day of delays is worth lots of money to a pipeline company, and the delays went so long they abandoned the entire process. Certainly, the pipeline companies are realizing that they can't just run everybody over anymore, and that they're going to have to find some different ways to go forward and to do business. And some of the tribes have really stiffened. Right now it's Line 3. There's going to be a big discussion about Line 5 coming up, in the future too. That'll cut across, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan. And these are huge issues, each to be unpacked on their own terms. But I think there's more power out there with the people than we realize, and it can really alter things. Dakota Access, Energy Transfer Partners that was running the one at Standing Rock had an especially brutal response, hiring private security firms and sicking dogs on people. And, there was some pretty rough stuff that happened there. The governmental response is also pretty brutal there. They weaponized the education system and social services and sent them out to say, hey, every kid there that's truant, we'll start a CHIPS petition, we'll pull those kids out from their families. They're not being properly homeschooled. There are all kinds of stuff going on. Charging people with riot if they were coming to do a news report and so forth. And I think that kind of response is really troubling and corrosive to things like freedom of speech. So there's a battle going on. There's a lot of people involved in it. When I think about my part, I would love to say that I'm totally green and living off the grid and all of my energy is self-contained with my wind and solar farm or something like that. I'm not there. But there are things we can do and that we are trying to do, individually and with our family and encourage within our communities. And honestly, I think, and what I told when the Enrich guys wanted to talk to me was if you could take the long view, honestly, 100 years from now, are you guys going to be pumping gas out of the ground? And they're in a position where they could accelerate the growth of green energy and lessen our dependence on fossil fuels faster, or they could double down and fight and hold off and extend our need for fossil fuels longer into the future. And they already are doing things like building
solar, wind and stuff like that, but it's often thought of as a way to deflect criticism and to make sure they've got a diverse portfolio, but they don't necessarily lend their energy towards a really responsible, environmentally and human responsible response. So it'll be a battlefield. There's a lot of people leaning into the discussion, a lot of information out there. So.
Yes.
I'd like to know some more about what inspired you to make this film.
So I am friends with Bob Trench, the producer, with his nephew Tom. And Bob originally he wanted to do a documentary about chronic disease in different communities. And one of them was in the Native community. And Tom said, well, hey, let's go visit with my friend Sarah. So they come in and meet with me. God, I kind of hate telling this story because I sound a little bit like a jerk in it. And you'll hear why shortly. So Bob is saying, I want to talk about cancer. I want to talk about diabetes, in different communities. Do you think that would work in the Native community? And I was like, here's the thing. We don't need another one of those documentaries. We know that cancer and diabetes and heart disease are killing people. We have had people come to our communities and try and tell us, oh my God, you people need to eat better. We agree, but you put people on reservations were not land given to natives, so here, okay, we're gonna take your land, but you guys can live here. It was a planned out genocide. The food given to people on reservations was, it was filled with mealworms. It was rotten. It was insufficient. There was actually an Indian agent in Montana in the 1860s who is quoted talking about how wonderful it is that when he would go to reservations, these Indian maidens, half clad and half starved, were willing to barter their limbs for the smallest bit of food, the smallest bit of warmth. That, look, we've starved them enough that these women are willing to sell their bodies so that they don't die. So I was talking to Bob and saying, we know healthy eating, yep, regular exercise, we got it. You guys keep sending people to us all the time. We've met them all. We've probably, one of the funny things about documentaries in the Native community is everybody goes to the exact same places to do documentaries. So you'll see the same people and you're like, Chuck, oh my God, he looks so good. Yeah, I saw him 2 documentaries ago and he's still got that cat. Oh my gosh. So you see the same things over and over again. Every documentary about Native communities takes place at some point in Pine Ridge. They talk about, the noble Lakota warrior who defeated Custer in battle, and now look at how broken these people are. And they show a barefooted kid standing on a dirt road. They show a wild res dog running through. They show someone passed out. It's the same documentary a million times over. And I'm talking to Bob, and I'm just feeling like, man, I'm just kicking this dude again and again, just like, yeah, thanks for bringing me your hopes and dreams. Let me just crush them. So I said, have you heard about historical trauma? He was like, nope. I said, the issues of diabetes and heart disease and cancer go far deeper than just people aren't eating right and exercising. It's in our very DNA that, so when moms are pregnant, they aren't just giving their babies nutrients, they're giving their babies information about the world they're going to enter into. These are the traits you will need for this world. So babies born to moms who are experiencing trauma have lower birth rates. They have higher startle responses. They're more likely to be diagnosed with conduct disorders, behavioral disorders, because they're babies who were told in the womb, the world you're entering into is dangerous and you need to be prepared to fight. Now that message has been passed on for babies for generations and generations and generations. So it's not any wonder that it's not surprising to see people in their 40s who have lost their limbs to diabetes. It's not surprising to see someone who has survived cancer still smoking. It's not surprising that any of these things have been happening because for generations, people came into the world already knowing this is dangerous. And Bob left my office, and I thought, okay, I'm never seeing that dude again. And I spent the day just being like, wow, oh my God, they came to talk to me and they were really excited, and I was just like, nope, nope, nope. But about a week later, I get an email from Bob. And one thing that I sometimes forget being in the Native community is I sometimes forget, the things that we have all known that have impacted everybody's lives, that have shattered people and caused us to, have to rebuild our families. That stuff is stuff that not everybody else knows. So I get an email from Bob, and he is just like, I started researching this stuff, and I didn't know any of this. And another story about how I am kind of a jerk in this whole thing is sometimes people would come to me and they would say, we just read about the boarding schools. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And it would take me a moment to realize, okay, I have to sound worked up. And I didn't have that thought because I didn't care, but it was this feeling of, this thing that like, my grandma's a boarding school survivor. The things she's told me are limited, but horrific. I know so many boarding school survivors, and I would have this feeling of this information is out there. So if people haven't already found it, like the reason you guys aren't upset must be because you know about it but don't care. But then realizing, people legitimately don't know that. There was a teacher in Mankato. Mankato is the site of the nation's largest mass execution in history, the Dakota hangings in 1862. There was an elementary school teacher who was explaining the hangings and the Sioux uprising, and the way she chose to explain it was that the Dakota people did not use their words. I mean, technically, yes. I mean, they didn't speak English. They were being starved. They were being murdered. They were way past the point where using your words would have done anything. They were doing what they had to do to survive. But if children are being raised, being told, well, the problem was just these savages didn't play by the rules. Communities of color, marginalized communities, oppressed communities are often asked to grieve quietly and pleasantly. That if you are upset about something, could you please do something beautiful and symbolic? Maybe, you do some sort of put together like a quilt and just have it kind of travel the country. But please don't like mess up my good day by telling me all about your stuff. So when people start to express legitimate hurt and anger and frustration, there's power in that. Because for a long time, what happened to people wasn't considered to actually be a crime. You killed an Indian, who cares? Kill a couple more. They're not people, they're, the Redskins, A redskin was not necessarily a person. It was a chunk of a person. It was a unit of money. So who cares if you kill some of them? But then because for so long, all of that genocide, all of that violence and abuse was something that everybody knew it was going on and no one was upset. When people started to finally say, this is ridiculous, we are not going to take this, because communities of color are asked to grieve quietly and pleasantly, the response sometimes is, oh my God, you guys need to calm down. I'm loving that Caucasian shirt in the back. Good choice. There's a Native comedy troupe. For anyone who can't see, it says Caucasians, and it's kind of similar to the Redskins logo. There's a Native comedy troupe, the 1491s, and The Daily Show did a special where they had a panel about whether or not the term Redskins was offensive. And they brought in a bunch of fans of the Washington Redskins, who are coming in their jerseys, Redskins pride, they got stuff painted on their face. They got war paint and everything, very culturally sensitive. And then they bring in this comedy troupe of well-dressed Indians who are very prepared for this. That the Redskins fans' argument was, I just like the Redskins, and I always have, and I don't want to have to learn a new name for them. Do you know how many jerseys I have? If I have to replace them with new ones, I'm going to go broke. That was it. The Native panel made very compelling arguments. They brought in research, they brought in history. But one thing they also did was they went to a Redskins game, and one of the members wore that Caucasian shirt. There was a man who literally tried to run him over with his truck. People were giving death threats. They were screaming. They were furious. How dare you mock our culture? That is so offensive and dehumanizing that you came in here. I am more than just a Caucasian. Nobody saw the irony in it. But the other thing that's more important is, yeah, it was funny, but look at the fact that a very small amount of peaceful protest by a Native person was met with violent, homicidal ire by people whose only real connection to it was, I like this. It was acceptable for non-Native people to threaten and literally try and run down an individual because their feelings were hurt. I don't even think their feelings were hurt. I think they were mildly annoyed. But someone engaging in peaceful protest about a very real issue. It's not just about the name. Somebody once asked me, so if you guys are offended by the Redskins, what about the Fighting Sioux? Why aren't you upset about that? What do you think about that? And I said, you know what? The Sioux were excellent fighters. If you know anything about helicopters, you have the Kiowa, you have the Apache, you have the Lakota. There are actually military rules about what helicopters can be named, and they're supposed to be named after Native tribes and chiefs. So this guy was like, yeah, we're honoring that you guys were great fighters. Here's the thing, though. Yes, the Sioux were phenomenal fighters, and they were brutally punished for it. They were massacred. Yes, the Kiowa, the Apache, the Lakota were powerful people, but they were forced onto reservations. So, thanks for the helicopter name, but could you give us land? Could you honor the treaties instead of these really kind of lazy, really it's the naming a helicopter after a tribe is kind of the equivalent of re-gifting a gift card that has like $1.02 on it. It's not that I thought you would like this. It seemed pretty easy. And one thing you guys missed the soapbox speech that I originally had planned, but guess you're not going to miss it now. So if you drive by the encampment, there are hundreds of people living outside. And a lot of people have wanted to know what they can do, and that's really great. The problem is, though, a lot of times people don't want to know what they can do. They want to tell you, here's what I can do. Some of the donations that we have received for the encampment make me wonder if those people understand what the term homeless means. Because a lot of these donations are based off of the idea of, I don't want to give you money because I don't know what you're going to spend it on. But let me give you items that I know I would like a lamp. A very crucial part of owning a lamp is having a place to plug it into. Otherwise, you just have a paperweight. But there's this idea that outside communities get to go into a community and say, we know what you need. The term that gets used is the Great White Father. Let me tell you how we will help you. But the other thing is, people also not only want to be able to say, here's what you are allowed to do with the help I'm going to give you, they also want to say, here's who is worthy of the help I'm going to give you. So I don't want to give my money to someone who's using drugs. I will tell you 100%. If I went through what the people living outside were going through, without a doubt, I would be on drugs. I don't want to, there are some people who need housing, but other people, they're just going to screw it up. Maybe, but that person who gets looked at as lesser than, as not having a future, you don't know. We don't have a crystal ball. And why is it that only some people are deserving of second chances? Why is it that only some forms of sad are sad? That with sex trafficking laws, if you're under 24 years old, you are a victim. But 25, yeah, you're probably okay. Why is it that only some types of tragedy are considered tragic? Missing white woman syndrome. There are hundreds, thousands of missing and murdered Indigenous women that you don't ever hear of on the news. You can actually, and everyone here can do this, there is a national database, the NamUs system, where you can just go through missing and unidentified persons cases. There are, the US population is less than 2% Native, but I think about 3% of the people on NamUs are Native. But here's the problem with trying to determine whether or not someone is missing. The way we know someone is missing tends to go like this. Well, they never came home. You have to have a home in order for that to be something that people are aware of. Well, they need this medication and it was left behind. They can't function without this medication, so something really awful must have happened to them. Well, if you don't have an ID, you can't pick up your medication from the pharmacy. But also the way people experience health care and the treatment they receive and what diseases and issues they go in for is influenced by racism. My sister, her appendix was on the verge of bursting. And she was in so much pain that she was on the floor just wailing. And her husband said, we got to go to the hospital. We got to go to the hospital. And she said, I'm not going. They're just going to think I'm another pill-seeking Indian. And the thing is, she actually nearly died as a result of that. That's a pretty common conversation. I don't want to go get checked out at the doctor. The diagnoses that Native people get for mental health issues are very different than those of non-natives. The medications natives receive are very different than those that non-natives receive. That I hear people talk about their medications and I'm like, I didn't even know they still made that. And you're on how much? Was there like a vet clinic that you went to that they incorrectly entered you like, okay, for a 6,000-pound elephant, we're going to need this much medication? Did they just wheel it out like in a wheelbarrow? Because medication isn't always given to help people. Sometimes it's given to shut people up. Take this and go away. I don't actually remember what the question was.
What an answer.
Oh, crap. Yeah, so all of that inspired me. And I also want to give huge praise and appreciation to Bob because people are really interested in natives. They really like Native history and are very uncomfortable with Native present. So I don't know how many documentaries I've been in. The way I know if a documentary I've been in has played is the next day a bunch of people come up to me and go, I saw you on TV last night. What'd you say to that lady to make her cry? And I'm like, oh crap, it was on again. People love doing documentaries about natives. It's easy pickings. You know, oh my gosh, you go to Pine Ridge, you know, noble warriors, fallen, scourge of alcoholism, roll it, you're done for the day. Bob is one of the only directors I've ever known who actually formed relationships with people. That he talked to people even after the filming was done. When there wasn't more, he wasn't like, hey, how about we have lunch and I'll bring my sound tech guy. He treated people like they were people. That, you know, he and Melvin would go get burgers together. Like this, he and Mike would have these huge, long phone conversations. You know, I still talk to Emmy this day, you know, that there was a lot of potential for this to be something that was, oh, this is going to be easy. We're going to get awards hand over fist because people are going to get uncomfortable. They're going to cry. Yes. But I'm really appreciative of the fact that this was done in a good way. It was done with respect and people were treated as human beings and not, you know, really hot discussion pieces.